How's it going, everyone? Yosef back here with another video, and I hope you're having an amazing week so far. Today we get to review the 2025 Audi Q3, and I'm really excited about reviewing this for you. But before we get into the video, if you're new to the channel, my name is Yosef. I happen to be a car enthusiast with 3 kids, and I used to sell cars in the past. So if you're interested in my perspective, please subscribe. All right, now on with the video. So to kick things off, let's talk about the 2025 Audi Q3. And the big question that I want to answer today is it worth it? Should you look into a Q3 as your next vehicle? Let's say you don't have a big family, you just are yourself and your spouse or your partner. Maybe you have a dog and you want something that's practical, something that's a little cool, something that maybe is a little more exciting than just a normal mundane car. But the interesting thing is, you always have the next level up, the compact SUVs, the Q5, which is Audi's main selling product. Does the Q3 offer something compelling? Is it worthwhile? And if you were looking to spend $45,000 to $55,000 Canadian, does it make sense to put your hard-earned dollars into a Q3? Well, today we're gonna find out. Are you ready? Let's go. Okay, so let's start by talking about the pricing. You see, the Audi Q3 comes basically in 3 different trim levels, and they have 2 different engine options as well. You've got the Comfort line, you've got the Progressive, and then you've got the Technic. And the Comfort line starts at around $46,000 Canadian, and you can go all the way up to the Technic, which will cost you around $55,150 Canadian. And for the Trendline and the Comfort line, you can choose between 2 different engine options because, well, the Technic automatically gives you the better one. And both engines are 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engines, but for the base one you get around 184 horsepower. But if you're feeling that you need a little bit more power than 184 horsepower, you can opt for the slightly higher output version of this motor, and that puts out about 228 horsepower, which is some power, and we'll get to that in the driving impressions. Now let's take a look at the styling of the Q3, because it's a relatively handsome looking vehicle, but it also has quite a bit of aggression. Even though this is a small subcompact vehicle, Audi has spent a lot of time and attention giving you some really nice attention to detail. You've got some beautiful headlights with a lot of the new sort of LED daytime running light signatures, and you've got a relatively large front grille with the Audi logo, and this particular one is blacked out, which looks quite nice. There is a lot of black plastic around here where I'm sure if you got the higher trim levels you'd have some fog lights or some other intakes, but otherwise it's still a very nice, handsome looking vehicle. And I love the way that Audi sticks to their really nice creases and character lines around the vehicle. On the hood you've got these nice sharp creases, and on the side profile of the car you also have some nice rounded edges with some creases. It's very Audi and very distinctive. And moving to the back end of the Q3, we also have some very Audi styling here. It's very German, a lot of straight lines, a lot of angles, and it looks quite nice. And I really like the taillights of the Q3. They are very modern and fresh, and I think will look good even in a few years from now. Other than that though, there isn't a whole lot to talk about in terms of styling. It is very Audi, and Audi hasn't done anything too daring or exciting. The one thing that I wanted to point out though is, because this is relatively a base model, you'll notice that we've got fake exhausts over here, which is something that always infuriates me. If you're already going to put some design over there, just give us the real exhaust, even though this isn't the sporty model. Moving to the inside of the Q3, you'll notice that we've got a relatively basic looking door card, although it is nice that even though this is a entry-level model for Audi, they've still given us some nice details here. We've got some soft touch plastic up here, and we've got some curvature and some character lines here, and a metal door pull, which actually looks really cool and modern. I happen to like the way it sort of kinks down over there. And if we take a look a little bit lower down, we've got some soft touch materials over here, although this is relatively hard for your elbows. I know if you were on a long road trip, that would get pretty tiresome after a while, but it is nice that we've got some contrast over here, some plastic that looks really nice. And we've got the switchgear, which is typical of Audi, although I have to say the Volkswagen switchgear just feels a little bit nicer for some reason. But overall, everything feels relatively high quality and very well built and put together. Nothing moves or shakes. Very nicely designed. And if we take a look down here, we've got a nice sized cubby. It's rubberized in the bottom, so your things won't rattle around in there too much, although it is relatively small. But I understand for a vehicle this size, we can't have a massive door bin over here. It is really cool that we've got the trunk release over there as well. It would be nice though if we had a little bit more design or color or different materials down here. Moving to the seats of the Audi Q3, you'll notice that we've got some nice materials here. We still have some stitching and we've got a lot of adjustment in the headrest as well. And the seats, they look really nice actually. Given that this is a relatively base model, they still look pretty good and they are relatively soft and plush and they are comfortable. Not a lot of bolstering over here. You'll notice they are pretty basic in terms of that, but generally speaking, they are very nice. And it's nice to see that we still have the electronic seat controls over here. A lot of base models for vehicles, they give you manual adjustment for the seats. So it is nice that we've got some lumbar support and our power adjustments. We don't have memory seats over here. That's something that you would get in an added package or moving up the trim levels, but it is nice that this is power operated. That being said, the same can't be said for the passenger seat. You'll notice you've got a manual adjustment for going up and down, as well as for the backrest and for sliding the seat forward. That is quite a bit of cost cutting. It would have been nice for them to have at least some of those adjustments being power operated. I know in my Golf R, I've got power adjustments for the driver's seat and we've got power adjustments for the backrest. Here they really cut costs and they've given you a manual support there. Sitting behind the wheel of the Q3, you'll notice that we've got a very nice Audi steering wheel. Not too chunky, not too thin. It fits really nicely in the hand, and I've always loved Audi steering wheels. They look great. There's a lot of design in here, very thin spokes, and I really like the fact that we still have some physical buttons and dials over here. That's something that I know in a couple of years from now, we probably won't have even on base models for things. So it is nice that they've stuck to that. I also really like the fact that we've got a pass-through over here. It looks really high quality, and I have to say, the clicks for the buttons all feel really, really good. The dial does feel a little bit cheap over here, but again, I'd much rather have that over one of those haptic sliding bars that I get in my Golf R. Other than that, if we turn on the Q3, you'll notice that we're greeted with a digital gauge cluster, which is very nice. You wouldn't expect a digital gauge cluster for a base model, but well, Audi has given us one, and that's something that's a bit of a hallmark for them. Audis have always come with digital gauge clusters in the recent years, and it's really nice to see that we still have it over here. One thing that I will say, even though this is a digital gauge cluster, you don't have a lot of options in terms of configurability. There are some things that you can scroll between and get some driver assist information and some of your trip information, but other than that, there isn't a whole lot that you can put in that digital gauge cluster. It would have been nice to have a little bit more customizability for it, but that being said, this is more of a base model, so I do understand that we can't. Moving over to the infotainment system, you'll notice that, well, you've got a really nice sized screen over here. This is part of Audi's new design language, and I think it looks great. It's integrated well. It's not just a tacked on screen. So I give Audi a lot of credit for that. And it's a very responsive screen. It works as well as you would expect, and it's very intuitive. There is a little bit of lag moving between the different screens over here, but otherwise it's a very nice looking screen, very high quality. There's excellent black levels over here. It's not pixelated at all, so it does look very, very nice. Although in this case, we don't have navigation built in. That's something that, you know, you would expect on a vehicle like this nowadays. But other than that, very nice screen, very easy to use. There's nothing particularly interesting going on over here, although you do have some general systems that you can play around with if you want to play around with the brightness for everything, which is pretty typical of most vehicles. Other than that, nothing too exciting over there. The one thing I did want to mention is if you look a little bit lower down, we've got the climate controls with physical dials and buttons, and I love that. It's so nice that we have this, even though I know this is designed to be a bit of a cost-cutting measure and showing that it's a base entry-level vehicle into the Audi lineup. I still really like it. It's nice to have an easily adjustable fan speed over here. You can change the temperatures really easily, and you've got some really nice physical buttons over here. And you even have 3-stage heated seats for the driver and passenger. That's not something that you would expect for a vehicle that's, well, one of the base models. And it's really nice that we've got a separate volume control knob over here that also allows you to shift it side to side for the different tracks, and your engine stop start button over there as well. And we have these really cool switches that I think look a little more exciting than just having a panel or something traditional. And from here, you've got your drive select button. You can bring that up and you can choose between an off-road mode, your comfort mode, your dynamic mode, or you can set up your individual mode as well, which is actually not something that you would expect from a vehicle like this. You can choose between a sportier setting, a more relaxing driving experience, as well as the steering input if you want it to be more comfortable, more balanced, or sporty feeling and a little more exciting. That's really awesome. Thank you, Audi, for doing that. And if you notice a little bit lower down here as well, we've got some USB-C ports and we've got a wireless charging pad over here, which is very nice. And if you look a little bit further back, we've got a typical shift knob over here. Nothing too exciting again. They're not going to add the latest technology in this vehicle because it is the entry-level model, but we do have some very nice cup holders, your parking brake, and one thing that I really love about this is we have Audi and Volkswagen's awesome armrest that's adjustable and sliding. So if you want to ratchet it up, you can do that, or you can open it up all the way. And of course, you've got some storage under there, but either way, you've got a lot of adjustability, and it makes sure that when you're driving around, it's really ergonomic and feels great. And that's something that I love about these Audis and Volkswagen products. And you'll notice you've got a little cubby over here, which is kind of cool because you wouldn't even know what to put in there, but conveniently, it's just the right size for your key, so you never have to worry about losing that when you're driving around. That's an interesting touch. Other than that, I have to say that visually the interior is quite nice. There's a lot going on over here, but it is still very German, very angular, and I really like the fact that we've got this trim piece that sort of wraps around. Even though it is gloss black plastic, it is going to get a lot of fingerprints on it. It's nice that we've got this aluminum looking trim going around it. It just kind of breaks everything up and makes it look a little bit more expensive. And the fact that we've got the Quattro logo over here, and again, that gloss black plastic and this, what looks like it's probably trying to be carbon fiber up here, and even the air vents look kind of unique and sporty being at the top here. And I have to say there's a lot of good airflow coming out of here, so you will be nice and cool on those hot summer days, and you'll be nice and toasty in the winter. The one thing that we don't have is a heads-up display. That I know comes on the higher trim levels, but that being said, it is nice that we've got the digital gauge cluster here. You don't really need a heads-up display in a vehicle like this. But if we move up over here, you'll notice we've got a relatively rimless rear view mirror, and we've got this nice console area for our dome lights and for the sunroof controls, and it looks really nice and everything fits in nicely. There is a little bit of creaking up here, but again, this is the entry-level model for Audi. And if you notice, we've got a panoramic sunroof with a power sunshade. That's really nice to have even on a relatively base model, so I commend Audi for doing that. And the fact that the sunroof actually opens is also a big plus. Everything looks and feels very nice over here, and that's one of the hallmarks of Audi. It just, everything feels so well built. There's no give, there isn't really a lot of creaking or rattling that comes out of things. It's just a solid vehicle. One last thing to note before we move into the back of the Audi Q3, and that is, well, the backup camera leaves a lot to be desired. It's really poor quality in my opinion. Very pixelated. It doesn't give you a whole lot of information. You don't have a 360. You can't really change the angles. You know, that's something that I think, being a luxury premium vehicle, even though this is the base model, that should have been a little bit better, but that's what we've got. Moving to the backseat area of the Audi Q3, you'll notice that we are greeted with a very similar looking door card. And I have to say, Audi's given us some relatively soft touch materials up here as well, and they haven't cheapened out on this backseat area. Everything looks and feels about the same in terms of quality as the front, and it is nice that we've got this big chunky grab handle back here, although you may notice that we've got a very small pocket over here, probably big enough just to store a water bottle. Other than that, you can't really put much else in there. But if you take a look at the seats back here, well, the quality of the materials feels exactly the same as the front, which is nice. They haven't cut costs anywhere back here, and the seats still look relatively comfortable. They look nice. You've got the same contours and stitching that we had in the front, and you've got this really clever pocket over here. So if you've got some stuff that might be rattling around in your pockets, you can put that over there and just give yourself a bit more of a comfortable experience. And if you take a look at the back of the front seats, we've got a little bit of netting back here, some scratchy black plastic back there. But again, this is more of a durable entry-level vehicle. But I have to say that even though this is a subcompact vehicle, you've got quite a lot of headroom and legroom back here. I'm honestly pleasantly surprised. I've got the driver's seat in my driving position. I'm about 5'7", and there's quite a lot of legroom back here, and even the headroom's not too bad. And one thing that I noticed that's really cool is you can actually slide the seats forward and backwards. So if you want a little more cargo room in the back, you have it, and that's great. You don't really see that feature on a lot of vehicles in this segment. And I have to say, it does feel pretty spacious, even though it's a relatively small vehicle, and there's a lot of footroom down here. The seats are mounted relatively high, so if you had to go on long journeys, your legs feel like they're well supported. So generally, Good job, Audi. A couple other things to note back here before we move to the cargo area. You've got some climate vents, which is really nice. I know on the higher trim levels, you'd have your own separate climate controls over here in a different zone, but it is nice that we still have the climate vents. And if you take a look a little bit lower down, that's some cost cutting over here. No USB ports down there, unfortunately. And if we take a look over here and pull down the armrest, you'll notice that not only do we have a really cool looking armrest, but we also have these really trick hidden cup holders, which look really nice and are definitely over-engineered. The one downside about this way of doing it is there isn't really a lot of space for your elbows. Most people will be resting their elbows right around here, and well, we've got the cup holders built in over there instead of down here in the front or somewhere else. So that's one kind of frustrating part about this. Although I have to say we do have a pass-through here. I'll show you that when we get to the cargo area. So it is really nice that we can utilize this space really well. And I have to say it is kind of cool that these seats are contoured and kind of fit in. So when you're sitting in there, you don't feel like you're just on a sort of regular bench. It gives you a lot of room in there and it feels like you're sinking into the seats a little bit more, and they're pretty comfortable, I have to say. And we also have easy access to the ISOFIX point. That is very much a Volkswagen Audi staple. So it is really nice that we've got it in this cheaper vehicle as well. Moving to the cargo area of the Q3, if we open up the tailgate, which is power operated, you'll notice that we've got a pretty spacious trunk over here, which is, again, surprising. You look at this vehicle from the outside and it looks relatively small, but you've got a good amount of space back here. And I have to say, it is really nice that we've got that pass through. This way, if you are carrying, you know, 1 or 2 kids, or you have a car seat back there, you still have the ability to fold down that middle section and have larger items going through there. So that is something that I wish more manufacturers did. It just makes it so much more practical and usable if you have 1 or 2 people sitting in the back. And it's nice that we've got these extra little cubby areas down here. You've got Audi's medical kit over there, and you've got some netting on this side. But if we lift up the load floor, you'll notice that we have a spare tire. You'd think with all the cost cutting for a vehicle like this, they would probably ditch the spare tire and just give you a can of Fix-A-Flat, but no, Audi has given us a full spare tire over here, and you'll notice that we've got a subwoofer built in as well, which is kind of neat. It's an upgraded sound system, which is really nice to have even on a base model. One other thing to mention, if we take a look up here, you'll notice that we've got our 2 favorite buttons. You can close the trunk, but you can also close and lock it from here, which is also a very nice feature to have even on a relatively base model. Okay, so how does it drive, and should you buy or consider an Audi Q3? Well, let's go for our drive and find out. Well, my first impressions are, I have to say that I was pleasantly surprised by the Q3. I honestly came to this review not having a whole lot of expectations, but I anticipated, because this is sort of an entry-level vehicle for Audi's lineup, that it's probably going to be very basic and not have much in terms of frills or luxury appointments, and it's going to feel very, very cheap. But I have to say, getting in here, I was pleasantly surprised. It actually was better than I expected. There's a lot of nice things in here, and it feels really solid, and I have to say that gives off a really good impression. You know, this is a relatively small vehicle. It's relatively inexpensive in the grand scheme of luxury vehicles, and you know, if you were trying to get into Audi and wanted just a small subcompact vehicle that you can drive around in and do the daily activities in, the Q3 is actually pretty good. You've got a lot of space in here, surprisingly so. Everything is built really nicely and fits together nicely, and again, you've got all the modern tech that you would expect and want to have from a vehicle in today's world. And I think for that, Audi's done a really nice job giving you that at a relatively low price point for a base model. And it's nice that you've got the choice between the 2 engines. I think 184 horsepower in a vehicle like this is still a bit small. It's nice to have something that's a little bit more powerful. You know, just over 200 horsepower is probably what I would expect from a vehicle like this. I wouldn't want to get something that's too underpowered, but you know, the driving dynamics are really nice. It's not riding really rough or hard, and the power in this particular one is good enough. It's ample. Again, nothing to write home about or that will blow your socks off, but it is quite nice. It's a bit loud in here. It's, again, an entry-level vehicle, so you have to expect that, but the steering is really nice. The steering wheel feels great. You know, you've got really comfortable seats in here, even though, again, this is the relatively base model vehicle. And I have to say, it's just generally a nice place to be. I like the fact that we still have all these different features in here, and the screen, even though again this is a relatively base model, it's a nice size and gives you all the features that you would want to have. And I like all the physical controls in here in a day and age where everything's moving to being digital. And again, in the infotainment system, it's nice and refreshing that we've got some physical buttons over here, and everything feels very tactile. It's nice that we've got different materials. It's not just one bland type of black plastic. You've got it broken up by this aluminum looking material, and you've got the Quattro badge over there reminding you that you've got all-wheel drive, and you've got a lot of headroom in here and a really nice panoramic sunroof. So overall, this particular one is pretty well equipped. I wouldn't want to spend, you know, upwards of $50,000 on a Q3, because at that point I'd probably want to get a base model Q5. It's just a little bit bigger and it offers a little bit more for somebody who's, you know, trying to get into a vehicle that just can do the daily activities a little bit better. All of that's to say that, again, I was pleasantly surprised about the way this vehicle was put together and what you get for it. The one thing that kind of surprises me about the driving experience is there's a lot of hesitation and lag is probably the better way of saying it from the throttle pedal. Even though, you know, it has a sportier mode and you can do that and the responsiveness is a little bit better, it still lags quite a bit. There's a bit of that turbo lag, and even when you just touch the gas pedal, it just feels like it takes a second or two for it to kick in, and then there's an immediate boost of torque and power from the turbocharger, and it's not as refined and I would say as easy to modulate as you might expect from a vehicle like this. But other than that, the driving experience is pretty good. It's relatively quiet, it's relatively comfortable. The seats are kind of a surprise in how much space we have. There's a lot of great visibility around here. The door pillars, especially the A pillars, are not that thick, and it's just generally a nice vehicle to drive. And if you were looking for something that wasn't super expensive, or you wanted to get into the premium market and you didn't want to spend the money for a Q5 or a Q7, I think the Q3 is a really nice balance. I haven't driven yet the GLA from Mercedes or BMW's X1, but I would imagine they'd be relatively similar. I do happen to like Audi's design. Looks really modern and fresh and, you know, very German, but it does itself really well in this vehicle, and I have to say it's, again, pleasantly surprising. So other than that, you know, would I recommend this to somebody who's looking for a relatively small entry-level crossover vehicle in kind of that premium market? I would say absolutely. The one only downside that I would just say is, you know, if you were kind of putting a family in here and you had car seats in the back, it's a little tight kind of putting things in there. The door opening is not as wide as you might expect or hope for, and that's something that'll be challenging if you're trying to put big car seats and fit your kids in there. But otherwise, there's a lot of space once you're inside there. And the features, again, are great. You know, you get a lot for your money when it comes to this, and that's something that Audi's done a pretty good job of. So overall, that's really everything I've got to say about the Q3. The TLDR really is that it's better than I expected, and I guess that says a lot. So thank you so much for taking the time to watch the video. I really appreciate it. I hope you've enjoyed it. For me, it's been fun, and I've never really spent so much time thinking about this subcompact crossover vehicle segment, but you know, now I've had the experience of driving the Q3 and I'm very glad that I have. It's a nice vehicle overall, and again, I hope this was insightful for you. Thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.